Welcome, everyone, to Acceleration Zone's Answer for Survivors. My name's Joe Malunas, and I'm going to be your host today. So, what we do on Answers for Survivors is we take some of the best questions that my team answers, including myself, and what we do is we sit down and we break them apart and really give you the solution that you're looking for. We don't go deep into the problem. We keep the questions short and tight, and what we really do is focus on how we can support you. Now, let's jump in with the first thing I want to share. The total trauma questions answered by our team as of this week is 2,839. We are almost at our goal of 5,000. I'm really excited. So right now, we have a psychologist on our team, myself and Jenny, who are all competing for first place and who can answer the most. And right now, we're almost at 1,000 apiece. So I'm really excited to see who does that. So let's jump into the actual structure of our show, and we're going to start answering questions. So the first question comes from Brenda. How long does it take to heal from trauma bonding? And second, how long before you no longer need your abuser? This is a challenging one. You know, some of the people that we have supported in the past and currently, what we notice is that some people come from relationships, right? And there's a long-term situation there. And one of the things I want to show you is this diagram of the stages of trauma bonding. And what you're going to see here down at the bottom right there is a justification stage. And that's the most dangerous part of trauma bonding. It's where you're really lowering your standards of your self-worth. And, you know, that's typically what keeps you in these terrible relationships. You know, abusive people, what they do is they'll ruin your self-esteem. They'll cut you down so many times that you think that's the norm. And one of the things that you really have to do when you're dealing with trauma bonding, I think the best way to do it is to actually show you. Let's see here, I get my pad cam. So one of the things that happens with trauma bonding, you'll notice on the pad here, is that imagine that this line is neutral. What's going to happen in a trauma bonding situation is usually in these relationships, there's like a skyrocket of connection and intimacy. And then what happens is it begins to be this zigzag pattern like this. And what you'll notice, this is positive emotions. These are really deep negative states. And let me move that over a little bit so you can see it. And what happens is people focus on these positive events and they sort of ignore these negative ones or say that, you know, the person's going to change, etc. So what you really have to do is realize and take your blinders off and really look at how this person's hurting you and really get them out of your life. I mean, that's really the solution for the most part. If you're dealing with a narcissistic person, etc., this is really what you need to do is really look at how do you protect yourself, and that's the stages that you're going to be in. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let's move on to our next one. This is an anonymous question. What are some of the common myths about healing from trauma? Wow, I mean, where do we begin with this? You know, I think the first one that comes to mind for me is that healing from abuse takes years. You know, when it happened to me years ago, I was so convinced that my life was really over. You know, I was a really happy person until this happened. And I was so convinced that, you know, that it was over. And I had a lot of evidence to support that. And what's weird is, you may find this as a survivor, is people will relate to you almost like you're walking around in your own funeral. like you're still alive, but your life is dead. And that's hard because I think that the norm for the connection is to really focus on the negative and really tone down when they're speaking to you, almost like it would be an outlier for you to be happy again. Do you know what I mean? And when you really look at these myths, they're propagated by the media. They're propagated by unsuccessful people. Unfortunately, not everybody gets out of the mental and physical pain that they're in. And often what you'll find is you'll go into like a forum or somewhere on the internet, which we don't advise to do. And what you'll find is there'll be people that literally have gone the last 10, 15 years after they're assaulted, and they have lived a very, very difficult existence. And it's not their fault. They didn't do that to themselves, but they didn't have the resources or coaching or therapy to get them out of that state. And just the fact that you're here watching the show shows me that you do. So I hope that helps you. Another myth, I think, is that related to our previous question on trauma bonding is like accepting that you're going to have this lower standard of living, that this traumatic event is going to actually dominate all of your conversations in your life. You're going to get to a point where if you do this right, it's the past. It's as inanimate as like picking up your phone. The emotional charge isn't there. The heart racing isn't there. That activation of the brain isn't there. It's just old news. And that's where you want to get to, is that point where you can talk about what happened to you occasionally. It's just like, it's no big deal. And we teach that, right? So let's go to the next question. Vipul asked, which diet can help a person heal from trauma? And this is a really interesting question. What I wanted to do is I actually pulled up a resource for you. It's called The Vitamin Cure for Depression. And it's a great book. And the research findings are here. And the key findings are, what they found through their research is that 30% of depression cases were actually curable with diet changes and supplements. Not advocating this as a primary solution, but it's definitely something to look at that's often overlooked by psychiatry, is the underlying health of the patient and making sure that at least it's not caused by the inflammation in the body or something missing. In fact, in the studies they did, they found that 2% of Japanese people are depressed, and 7%, 350% higher, are depressed in America. And the author's hypothesis that he had a lot of evidence for is that it's actually the diet. That Japanese people, as you know, live some of the longest lives in the world. I've been to Japan. That place is crowded. It's stressful. As a foreigner going over there, it's not like they're living some fairy tale life where there's less stress. They work really hard over there. But the underlying fact is that the American diet is wrought with inflammation, especially in the oils that you consume. So check out that book, Vipul, and I think that will be a great resource for you. Okay, let's move on. Question 5. How can someone heal from trauma and dissociation? So let's talk about what dissociation is first off. I pulled this diagram from one of the specialists in the actual subject of dissociation. And the one you want to pay attention to is the bottom right. And it's called depersonalization. And that's where you're really going into, a state of disconnection from yourself and just kind of feeling like a robot on autopilot. And what's really difficult about this is sexual assault brings on a lot of feelings of anxiety around intimacy again, and it drags into your next relationship or your next encounter, right? In my case, I have an amazing physical relationship with my wife. We've been together since we were so young, like 19 years old is when I met and started dating her. And after this happened, there was some problems with intimacy, and it was difficult, and it was really hard to be present when certain things reminded me of the assault, right? So one of the ways that you can deal with dissociation is really looking at how to be present. And there's a variety of methods to do that. Some of the most popular are breathing exercises that really relax the brain, diaphragmatic breathing. The other one that was really creative that a lot of people are using is actually changing the temperature of their body. And they're using that through splashing water on their face, interestingly. And what that does is it kind of like wakes you up, makes you present. There's a lot of nerves in the face related to temperature, and that was one of the interesting techniques that was actually taught by a doctor. So I hope that helps you. All right, but let's move on. What happens when you're spiritually awakened, but your heart isn't healed from trauma yet? And that's an anonymous question that came in. You know, that's an amazing thing. You know, being spiritually awakened is powerful. You know, you feel connected to a higher power potentially, and maybe even feel like you're on purpose in your life. But what I get from this question is that there's some more work to do, you know, and I think that what this shows me is that you're in the right place by the fact that you're just reaching out to us with this question. Shows me that you want to work on yourself, and we have plenty of products that are coming out that cost as low as $1, you know, or we have our premium offerings too. But I think really just get started with finish the work, you know. It sounds like you're making progress in some areas of your life, and you just need to keep going, which is really exciting. So we're here for you. Next question. What are some signs that you've re-traumatized yourself in the process of healing from trauma? And that's asked by Stuart. Great question. You know, part of healing from trauma is you're going to have those reminders, right, of what happened. And just the fact that you're working on yourself, there's different methods, right? My favorite example is actually a book I have on my shelf that's 300 or 400 pages thick. And it's like a trauma workbook that somebody created. I buy all my books used on Amazon to save money. And I couldn't believe it. The thing came, it was a workbook, and the person had filled out one page. And when you read the prompts, it asks all these like horrible questions that would make you focus on the past. And you can see like exactly why this person never finished this book. And that's how a lot of trauma resources are, unfortunately, is what they're doing is they're literally asking you questions that do bring up the past. And that is not what we do. We have a totally different approach. So it's just really important that you really focus on getting a proven method that you can use and therapy. We also recommend therapy concurrently with what we do. That doesn't do that, you know? You want to minimize the amount of times that you go back to that stuff because you want to look at the trauma in your life like a weed and you just want to starve it out. Weeds need water. Weeds need sunlight. It's like, imagine if you wanted to kill a weed. You would not water it. You might put a box over it and even poison it to get rid of it. Just get it out of your life. And really what you want to do in a garden is you want to focus on the things that you want to flourish. And that's really what we teach. Okay? Hope that helps. Next question. Can therapy or medication be the only way to heal from trauma? I have no qualms with using medication. I was very close to using it myself at one point. I remember being in the backyard with my mom and dad, and things weren't going well in my recovery. I was a real mess. I was almost killed during the event, and it was really shaken. And I remember, wow, this is powerful. I remember the brown bag from CVS. I remember it crinkling. I remember like feeling the paper in my hands, and it was filled with antidepressant prescriptions. And I pulled one out, and there was a warning on the bottle that said, may increase suicide. I was like, well, that's not helpful right now because, you know, I had those thoughts. I was dealing with that. So I ended up finding different methods to move ahead. But if you're on it, make sure you stay on it. And if you're making a lot of progress in your life, The problem I've seen people do is they'll make so much progress rapidly that they'll just cut and dry, cold turkey, end their prescriptions, and not an advocate of that at all. You want to work with your psychiatrist or your psychologist, and gradually come off of these things if you ever need to. Okay. All right, but really, to answer your question, there's a lot of other methods. For example, we teach a lot of visualization and use hypnosis techniques that are really relaxing and put you in the emotional states that you want to be in, and really clearing out the past. It's amazing. But we're going to cover those in the various shows that we're going to do. Next question. Does therapy actually heal you from trauma, and how? Great question. I actually used a therapist, and her name is Tiari, and she was really good. One of the things that she was really big on, and we actually have a whole course on this coming out, is putting a blockade around your mind so you're not actually exposing yourself to like YouTube videos or violent movies, etc., that really perpetuate and trigger the anxious mind that you have, right? You have to understand that your mind is sensitive right now. And what therapy can do is it can give you tactics and strategies for working through and processing the trauma. And if you really need to talk about the trauma, a therapist can be a really good ear. We have clients that have a lot of success with EMDR therapy. We've heard a lot of great things about that, and there's a lot of data supporting that too. If you can stick through the treatment and make it through, it's a really successful one. All right, let's keep going. This question's asked by Emily. Can you heal from trauma without talking about it? Here's what the research shows. When trauma is left unaddressed, doing nothing or avoidance, it hampers recovery because the brain and mind don't integrate the experience. And the maladaptive beliefs, those are the bad beliefs, they remain and the symptoms persist. And that's from an actual journal. And it's true. I think, Emily, to speak to your question, it's really the false belief that something's wrong with you, that this happened. There's nothing wrong with you. There are millions of people a year that go through this, unfortunately, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you talking about it. There's nothing wrong with you asking for help. So just consider that the proof is there that you're better off by talking to somebody, regardless of who you trust. Just make sure they're good people and take the initiative to make contact, okay? Hope that helps you, Emily. Next question. Do people really, truly heal from trauma, or do they have better control of handling it? And that's asked by Joey. 100% you can heal from this. To do this company that I'm in now, I write content and film content 10 to 12 hours a day, every day. I usually take a half day off a week to go skydiving or do something fun. But I work really hard. And man, I couldn't imagine myself being able to do this if I haven't healed, right? I would be obviously triggered or sad. So I'm a great role model for this. And that's why I started this company. In fact, my progress was so rapid that my therapist that I mentioned, Tiari, actually had me become a speaker at an event in Orange County, where I was speaking in front of hundreds of people to share my story and what I did. And what I realized is that there are other people that have fully healed from this. Many of the speakers on that panel were examples of that. They weren't as fast as my recovery, but yes, you can fully heal. You can be happy. You can have a family. You can have children. You can follow your passions. You can live a complete life. You have to understand this one thing. This is not your identity. This is not your identity. It's a phase, and we're going to move on from it. We're going to fix it, and we're going to move on. It's not your identity. You're not a survivor. That title's only used in our materials and marketing because people understand what it means. But it's not who you are. You're Joey. You're not a survivor. You're a mother. You're a sister. You're a human being. Remember that. Okay? From the heart. Next question. What role does forgiveness play in healing from trauma? Whoa. Heavy question, right? You know, myself, I carried around some anger, from what happened. It was never directed about anybody else. It was really about the attacker. He was a pro, right? He offered me water at an event, and you can guess the rest, right? So, but by releasing that anger at one point, under the care of a professional, it was actually with Tony Robbins' team, actually, in Fiji, where this happened. I did that forgiveness, and it's not condoning the behavior at all. Who would do that? But it was releasing me. Like I was released. And the thing I can share with you is that the joy that came from that was phenomenal. It's not part of our trainings, doing forgiveness. It's super advanced. I know that, right? But it's not necessary. You can be fully healed without the forgiveness component. Is it better with it? Yes. But you're going to thrive without that. You don't have to forgive anybody. You don't have to. Okay? Next question. What are small, effective ways to start healing from trauma? And that was asked by Chris. Chris, I don't often say this, but maybe a different question is better. One of the top coaches in the world that I hired to train me over the last 3 years, his name's Daniel. He works for Tony Robbins. The first thing he told me is like, whenever you're in hell, Joe, you got to keep moving forward. And what he meant by that was that don't take small actions to get out of pain or change. You got to run to where you want to go. You want to take massive action. So consider that you're in the right place. You're welcome to take any of our courses that we offer. Again, many of them are just $1. And really start to explore this and just consider that you may want to ask a different question. And that question would be something like, what's the big action I could take to get to where I want to go twice as fast or 3 times as fast? That's really what this company is about. That's why I called it Acceleration Zone. It's about how do we increase the speed to get to the result, not how do we do the minimum. It's like, imagine you wanted to improve your health and you did 1 push-up a day. Like, yay, I feel good. I'm doing something. Not really. You're kind of lying to yourself, right? Unfortunately. And that's why the level of action that you want to take needs to match the change that you want. The thing I'll say, though, is that it's not effort so much as it's doing the right things right now. The right things. Sometimes, like, the metaphor I can think of is like online, they sell a shovel. I don't have a picture of it right now, but it has 2 handles. I don't know if you ever shoveled dirt before. I worked in a yard years ago. Jenny's dad had to remodel her house. And I remember the shovel. It was a lot of work, right? But this guy came out with a shovel with 2 handles on it. You don't even have to bend over, and it uses leverage. It's brilliant. You use your top hand as a what do you call it, an anchor point. And it literally is twice as effective. So it's not effort as much as using the right tools. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. Next question. Can you heal from trauma if you don't talk to anyone about it and try not to think of it too much? What if I told you not to think about the pink tie that I'm wearing right now? What are you gonna focus on, right? And that's exactly what I notice when people say, don't think about something, is that you tend to focus on it. You're thinking about the tie again, aren't you? And the human brain doesn't think in negatives. Like if I tell you not to think about this microphone, you're thinking about the microphone. You have to picture what a microphone is in your mind. So that's the problem with almost all of the programs that are on the subject of trauma. They get you to focus on trauma. Our program is coaching that revolves around modeling happy, successful survivors. And that's all we teach. That's all we teach. Whether you're joining your aliveness community, which we'll go into in another episode. Like tonight I'm going skydiving for the, they call it the sunset load. That's where you go to the drop zone and you get on the plane and then you're literally watching the sunset. They don't allow any jumping after that. And it's beautiful. But my community, many of them don't even know any of this about me. They're obviously the more and more stuff that goes on the internet, people see it, but they would never think that I'm some scraping by survivor that focuses on, nearly being killed years ago. It's not the point. The point is like now I'm a thriving human being and they identify me as a skydiver or a fun guy or a dad or whatever identity they see for me, but it's not survivor, So again, getting back to what we talked about earlier with someone was, this is not your identity. And when you're in these groups, when you're expanding your social network, it's not about being a survivor anymore. You've moved on. And you do that before you moved on. All right. 15. How can somebody, let me move this. How can somebody heal from trauma while maintaining their kindness? How can someone heal from trauma while maintaining their kindness? That's a great question. The emotional states that you're going to go through are pretty wild after this, right? Everybody reacts differently to stressors. Some people are external and some people are internal. I'm one of the internal types. Like I'll get hard on myself or negative about myself. And some people, when they're under stress, they'll be mean to other people, right? And it sounds like that's what you're struggling with is the external expression of the emotion, right? And one of the things that I'll show you is if you look at your behavior, again, like a line, and above the line is positive and below the line is negative. If you actually track your moods over time, what you'll notice is, say, like tonight, I'm going to go skydiving. Maybe that's like a peak experience. And then down here, say I have a car issue. You want to look at what's preceding these moods, right? And you want to be able to look at what preceding event caused these positive state changes. Usually, for the most part, let me turn me back on. Usually, for the most part, it's anticipation of the things that are coming up that often lead to a positive state change. And that's really hard after you've been assaulted because, let's put it this way, it's almost like you got blinders on and you cannot see anything above the line and you're focused on down here. I'm going to draw an eyeball as fast as I can. And this is really where you're focused is down here, is looking at negative moods, maybe sadness and these emotional states. And you want to look at what happened before you went down into these states. One of the things that we're releasing is called Blockade, and it's a program about how media and the stuff from your phone is typically what's dragging you down back into these negative modes. And I would suggest when that comes out, take a look at it. It's going to be one of our lower cost offerings, but it's called Blockade. And it's really, again, going to focus on what causes these drops in your emotional state. It's not, let me put it this way, it's not getting assaulted over and over and over. That's in the past. And you think it's that, but often it's these inputs that happen in the last few days that are recent that cause these negative moods. Okay? Hope that helps. What are some ways to prevent and heal from trauma? Let's focus on the prevention piece first. One of the things that I want to share with you is it's actually called the muzzle effect. And it's a trademarked concept that is part of our programs. And it's very simple. All the fear, all the anxiety, all the pain that you feel inside your body, one of the physical effects it can cause, I believe the term is aphasia, and that's where your inability to speak. Literally, like, I don't know if any of you can relate. It's so hard to initiate the conversation of like what happened to you, right? You feel like it's so hard to get it out. But here's the danger of this muzzle effect. When something happens the second time, right? When the next, attacker comes at you, if you lock up verbally and you're not able to express yourself, your chances of defending yourself go down dramatically, right? So you want to make sure that whatever program you're doing, you work on getting that voice back, that power back, that feeling like, stay away from me, like being able to really at a level 10 express yourself and telling people, F off, get away, instead of just being totally locked up, almost as if a muzzle is around your mouth, like you can't talk, that feeling. So we did a lot of research, put that program together with a psychologist on our team. And, that program is actually coming out. It's going to be one of our dollar programs. And, you don't actually have to feel like it's permanent at all. The opposite of that muzzle effect is a warrior. I mean, somebody that just has that ability to verbalize and literally dominate with their voice and their body language. And you need that as a survivor to clearly communicate to the world that you are not going to be a victim again. So prevention is about empowerment, and it's about switching in to the mode of warrior. I actually keep on my desk this object. Let me show it to you. I'll put it on the pad cam. Let's see here. Boom. Yeah. Let me see if I can zoom this. Yeah. So that's a Navy Trident. I bought myself this recently, just as a symbol of like your ability to literally go through anything. And if one of the things I actually watched with my wife, we actually bought the entire series of DVDs. It was DVDs back then. On Navy SEALs and how they go through the most intense training. Like they'll be sent to go run into the ocean, get sandy, and in the bitter of winter, they'll have to run a marathon after that and then stay up, for days at a time during Hell Week. And the thing that I want to tell all of you that are survivors is that, you're earning your Trident right now. The Trident is a symbol of what you get when you become a Navy SEAL. It's literally handed to you on one of your first combat missions. And I'm not a Navy SEAL, but I love this object because it's a reminder of how mentally tough I am and what I've accomplished in my life. And I love it. And I encourage you to get one once you have victory in this area of your life. Okay? All right. Let's go back here. How can the brain heal from trauma induced memory changes? Great question. When I was in my psych program at Northern Arizona University, I remember the teacher talking about how trauma can cause you to actually forget memories. And I'll be the first to admit, I thought it was the biggest bunch of BS I ever heard. I was in class, and this was well before I was ever attacked. And I thought, how could somebody ever actually forget, what happened to them? Have the brain block it out. But it's true. It happened to me. I got home from Burning Man, and I was literally like on the couch with my family. We were all laughing about all the stuff that happened at Burning Man, all the crazy pictures I had. And we were like sitting there, like laughing, looking at the pictures. And it was like, I think 3 days later, like on day 3, like the absolute horror of what happened came back in full intensity. So, yeah, the brain can block out, you know, the past, and then it tends to come back. But that just means that it's time to deal with it. And, the brain will bring it up when it's time to deal with it. And you don't need to go looking for it any sooner, you know? So that would be how I'd answer that. How do you maintain emotional boundaries after healing from trauma? This is a great question. You know, one of the things that we're going to teach you in Blockade, for example, is really about putting boundaries down about uh, what your family does around you. And it's really important. And one of them is really controlling the sources of flashbacks. And one of those is the media that's consumed in your household. For example, like what's on the TV. And setting those boundaries is really tough. I mean, because the thing you got to remember is these people love you. They love you, and they didn't cause this to happen to you. So if they break these rules, you can't yell at them or freak out. They didn't cause the we're assuming they're not the perpetrator, but the supportive people in your life that are around you, when they violate these boundaries, you just have to keep reaffirming them. Like I still have to do that to this day about media, and making sure that I put that blockade around my mind to protect it, because my moods are really important. There's nothing more important than being happy, and I've figured out the ways to do that. And I don't expect people around me to ever have that level of knowledge. Like you're here educating yourself on the solutions to trauma, and it's very likely that your family isn't. So just be patient with them and calmly respond. Okay. Are there any alternative methods to heal from trauma other than therapy or medication? Kind of a loaded question. I think that we encourage everybody to do therapy. Um, if you don't have the money for it, we have a course coming out that helps you find resources, especially free therapy in your area. That's one of the things that we really encourage. The therapy that I got was actually free from the county of Orange. The disadvantage of free therapy, though, is like as soon as you start showing progress, it's like taking a cake out of the oven when it's half done. It's like it's not done, but there's all these other cakes that haven't even been started. And that's the pressure that, that these county and free resources feel, is that it's kind of like a factory. Like if you really want that personal attention or coaching, you're not going to find that with those free resources typically. Um, other than medication, again, we don't really comment on medication, whether you take it or not. We just say that don't get excited about a method and stop your medication. That's between you and your doctor. As far as alternative methods, I mean, that's exactly what we teach, and if I was to show you a diagram of what we're talking about, is I think you're kind of thinking dichromatically, and that's let me control this. Move this here. All right. So this is like black and white, right? It's like you're thinking or, like I'm either going to do A or B, black or white. And what's more productive is actually thinking about yourself, like putting your goal in the middle of what you want to accomplish with your recovery, and put yourself in the center of that. And then you want to surround yourself with a variety of people. You want to think and. Maybe you hire a coach, right? Maybe you're consuming content about getting over assault. Maybe you're joining an aliveness community, like we're talking about, where I'm in skydiving, for example. And again, your aliveness community can be knitting. It can be a bunko group. I don't care what you do. But, you really want to think in the terms of and, right? You want to think about how do I add to my team, not either or, like we're talking about before. It's really about a holistic approach. This is what I did, and I just think that it was a really effective method. I had all these people. There's actually a few more that I didn't even list here. There was contribution. I was a coach. When I was going through the worst of this, I was actually a coach at a organization and as a volunteer helping people. and the community and friendships I got out of that, they were so supportive. But I hope that answers your question. All right, perfect. So again, it's not or, it's and. All right, we're getting there. What is the fastest way to heal from trauma mentally and physically? I would say it's repetitive with our last answer. It's looking at the solution as multifaceted, right? And to go back to the pad cam, it's really about having an entire team of people around you. There's one belief that I can share with you that allows you to do this. It's this. For this one period of your life, for this one period, just right now, till it's over, give yourself permission to get the most amount of support you've ever had in your life. Hold nothing back, whether it's us or with someone else. Ask for help. Invest the time, the money, whatever you need to do to get yourself out of this state of pain. I cannot put a value on it. It is priceless. I never had any resource like this. I had to make this plan from making mistakes, from finally realizing that I didn't have to choose between solutions. I just started stacking them one after another, after another, after another, to the point where I became unstoppable. And you can model that exact behavior. And we can teach you that. Okay? How does age affect how people respond to and heal from trauma? Before I do the show, I always prepare, and went and did research on that. My response to this question is really focused on belief. The fact that you're asking about your age I would think two things. Either you're older or younger. In the case that you're older, maybe it's that false belief that, like, after so many years of dealing with this, can I actually make progress? And there are people that are like 70 years old that have breakthroughs in this, and the last years of their life are the best years of their life because they're free of it. I mean, don't you want that? And in the case that you're young, you have all the neuroplasticity, like the mind's ability to learn is maximized when you're young, but it still exists as an adult. We work with people from all ages, the women that we support. And the danger of this question, I'll show it on the screen again, is maybe you're looking for a piece of evidence that would dissuade you from doing anything about this. We all have that fear of failure, that we're investing time and, it's not working. And ultimately, you have to realize that you have nothing to lose, especially if the method that you're going to try and use doesn't involve, revisiting the past. That's important, right? Who wants to go through that? That 500-page book of prompts about your past, So just make sure that you realize it doesn't matter what your age is. The time to take action on this is now. You don't want to go another day in this maximum state of pain. What if in a month you could be 50% better? What if in 3 months you could be fully done with this? That's how long it took for me. Maybe results would be that good. What if it took a year? Who cares? You got to try. Next question. Are there any alternative methods to heal from trauma other than therapy or medication? I think we answered that. We already did that one. Perfect. Well, I want to thank you for coming to the show. And we do this every week. Again, I'm excited. Our next show, we should be over 3,000 questions answered online. So again, we're always here for you to support you. We have a variety of ways you can find us online. We'll put in the description, but just know that we're in your corner. We're going to fight for you. We're going to give you that support, and we'd be more than glad to be that person or the team rather, of all of our women coaches and Jenny and everybody that's on our team. We want to help you get through this period of your life and realize, like, ultimately, and I'll say it 100 times to you because it'll take that long, is that you can fully move on from this. You can, and you will. So keep moving forward. Hope to see you next week. All right, take care.